I was a child, I was really interested in astronomy, and it was just one of those things that was full of mystery at that time. And I studied lenses and telescopes, and I saw the surface of the sun with a little telescope that I made with lenses in a cardboard tube. So I was all enthusiastic about astronomy when I was in grade school. Then I learned a little more in high school, and I took physics courses, and finally through graduate school, I was thinking I wanted to be a particle physicist because that was the biggest mystery of that time. And then I was looking for a thesis project, though, and I found an advisor who had this new idea to measure the cosmic microwave background radiation, the primordial heat of the universe. And it had just been discovered 5 years before that, so it was time to go measure. So, okay, well, I'll try that. And so that was the beginning of my career as an astrophysicist. Most of my training is as a physicist rather than as an astronomer. I got to write a thesis about a project that didn't quite work. And I declared to myself, I thought to myself, well, this is way too hard for a young person. I'm going to get out of this field. So I got a job offer to become a radio astronomer. Okay, I'll do that. And I got a postdoc position at the NASA laboratory in New York City with a radio astronomer. But then NASA had another idea. They announced an opportunity for proposals in 1974, this was. So I said to my advisor, well, you know, my thesis project failed, but it really should have been done in outer space. So he said, well, we'll call up our friends. These are people who know what to do with an idea like this. And we had a meeting and created the concept for a satellite mission that would measure the cosmic microwave background radiation the way that it should be measured. So it was a long process after that, but 15 years later we launched it, and it worked that time. So my thesis project basically lasted for 25 years. The setback of the failure of that apparatus really showed me something truly important, which was if you don't test it, it is not going to work. And people sometimes would say to you, well, why don't you just take a risk and push the button and it'll work? It might work. And I think that we learned that that's cheating. And nature knows when you're trying to cheat. And if you don't build it right, it won't work. So that turned out to be extremely important to me later, because when we were building the satellite, we knew that we didn't have a chance to do it over, and so darn well better work. So it gave me the heart to say, you know, if we don't test it, it won't work. And that was pretty important at a time when the project that we were doing was running out of money and time, and we might not be able to test it properly. So I finally said, well, you know, we got to test. And my colleagues at NASA, the engineers, they know this. They know if you don't test it, it won't work, and they're very determined. But it was really important for me to back them up and say, yes, we will test it. And so it did work. And then it did wonderful things. Personally, my experience is we are going like crazy for ambitious projects to explore the solar system, to explore the cosmos, to learn everything we possibly can. And our technology has gotten better and better, and we can do these amazing things. And our application to things at home, it keeps on improving too. So as far as I can tell, we are continuing to do even more than we ever could before. Maybe the public isn't noticing because their attention's on other things. And because, among other things, we didn't have any big disasters lately. When the Hubble telescope was launched and was a problem, then everybody knew about it. And then we fixed it. So we were in the news. When you do everything right, people don't notice. They just say, oh, that's cool. They must not be doing anything exciting. But to me, what we're doing scientifically is as exciting as you could possibly imagine. And I guess perhaps you're talking also about the manned program, which has come to a temporary end in the sense of we no longer have a space shuttle to fly. But we're very close now to getting people to ride on our commercial launch vehicles that were set out as part of the plan. So pretty soon we should be able to do that again. That's pretty important. I was surprised by the importance of the discoveries that we made with the COBE satellite. The number one was within a few weeks after launch, I showed a graph of the cosmic background spectrum to the astronomers. I got a standing ovation for a graph. And I really didn't think I would. I thought, well, doesn't everybody know that's the right answer? I knew it was, of course, the right answer because I'd seen it. They didn't all know. We had some bad measurements, we had some really bad theories, and we had some serious doubt about whether our expanding universe story is correct. So now we knew that one. When we designed the project the first time, we didn't know that we would ever be able to find what we call the cosmic anisotropy, which is to say the map of the Big Bang radiation. The heat radiation is not uniform. There are hot and cold spots on it, which are not very bright, really hard to find. We didn't know they'd be there. There was no serious theory to tell us they would be there when we conceived the mission. When we got the data, it was fabulously important, and I didn't know how important it would turn out to be. I just couldn't have guessed that. Now we know that Mr. Hawking was right. It really is the most important discovery of the century, if not of all time, for scientists. So, at least for cosmologists. So what it meant was now we can explain our existence. Those little hot and cold spots measure the details of the early parts of the universe. They tell us about the gravitation that was there then. They tell us about the gravitation that should cause galaxies to exist today. They tell us about the cosmic dark matter and the cosmic dark energy. All of those things have their effects on those patterns of little spots. And no one knew in 1974, when we conceived this mission, that any of that could be done. Now it's practically an industry. There have been now 3 space satellites besides the Kobe satellite that were launched for this purpose. One came before, 2 after, and it's still an extraordinarily rich subject. So I never guessed how rich a subject it would be. More papers have been written about those spots than there were spots on the map, by far. So this is huge. I just never guessed. They do tell us about the story of the universe, and so they do confirm the other discovery, the one that got the Nobel Prize last year, about the accelerating universe. One of the reasons they could give a prize was it's been measured more than one way, you know. So the spots confirm that story. So the universe is accelerating. It means that distant galaxies are going away from us faster and faster. If you wait enough billion years, not only will the stars go out, but the galaxies will go away. So if you're the one astronomer left in the universe, it'll be very lonely. You won't see a single other thing besides your own star and your own galaxy. So that's something that we can tell is probably coming, if our story is correct, which I can't promise. I feel sure that there are other places like Earth. I also feel sure that we are unique. And I feel also quite sure that we will never find signals from another civilization, just because the universe is so large and it's so difficult to hunt through it. I feel sure there are other civilizations, but just that we can't find them. So we sort of know these things just from the large numbers. And Carl Sagan explained it all very well many years ago. I think he was right. So we're on our own. It's our job to preserve our civilization, expand it as far as possible, conceivably even to build a robot that can travel to another star and set down and land on a planet out there. So it's going to have to be a pretty smart robot, and it has to be pretty patient. But it's not impossible, as far as I know. It's pretty hard for us to go there, but it's possible to build a robot to go there. So we're thinking. Well, it seems to me that the life of a scientist is all about the creative process. People think, well, scientists are so smart, they must know a lot. That's really not how it feels to be a scientist. How it feels to be me, and I think to my fellow scientists, is we're always working on the part that we don't understand yet. The equipment that doesn't work right, the theory that doesn't function right, the algebraic mistakes that we haven't found yet, the computer program that doesn't work right yet. And we spend relatively little of our time thinking about the stuff we already know. It's all about the creative process for understanding what we don't know. So we are on this huge quest. So personally, a lot of my creative moments come from conversations with other people. Someone says, well, I could do this. And I say, well, in that case, why don't we try that? So at least 2 major concepts for observatories have come out from concepts that I've been discussing with friends. So that's part of how creativity occurs, is somebody offers you a problem and you say, I could solve that, or vice versa. Challenge other people to solve a problem. I read a lot of things outside my area of science. I'm so excited to read about what the biologists are finding these days. It's such an enormously productive subject. I love reading popular science and Scientific American and magazines that tell me what other scientists are doing in a way where I don't have to go into the detail and I get the inspiration of it. So those are things I like to pursue. I like to keep up with current events and understand the chaos of the world as well. Partly I'm just curious. Partly I'd like to have some influence if I could understand what to do. I'm told I was curious enough to get all the doorknobs off the house when I was 3. So I figured my parents knew something was going to happen. I do remember being curious as a child, being interested in everything that I could understand, and I read a lot of books. I had a very quiet childhood in the sense of growing up in the country on a research farm for Rutgers University. So after a while, the county library started sending around a library book mobile. So a truck full of books came every couple of weeks, and I would get everything I could about science. So it was an interesting time to be a child and to read about things, because it was also right around Sputnik time. So we go from, well, it's cool to be a kid interested in science to being, gosh, you could save the country when you grow up. So that was a very exciting time too. Wasn't only just curiosity, but I loved the curiosity part. I think my parents had more to do it than most people. They made sure I had opportunity to do things, and when I wanted to accomplish something, they would usually help a little bit. Now, they didn't have that great of resources either where we were in the country. You couldn't just go down to the shop and buy a lens. But when I wanted something, they usually figured out how to get something for me. They made sure I got off the farm to go away for summer camps in science a couple of times. That was cool. And they sent me off. They found ways to get me off to summer science programs in high school too, twice. So these were enough of an adventure outside my home district to find out, yeah, I have other friends like myself. I'm also pretty good at what I do. So that was tremendously important, actually. You have to discover you can accomplish what you want to accomplish to give yourself the courage to continue, because otherwise you could just get frustrated and give up. There were times that things were pretty hard to do, and I was thinking, well, how is this going to go? But I would remember, yeah, I've done hard things before. Maybe I can actually do this. So some people have to discover their courage in that way. I don't know how people felt about me. I actually got to see my high school math and physics teachers again a few years ago, and they sort of knew that I was a special person. But they didn't let on while I was there. They didn't treat me as though I was super special. They just sort of, well, let John do what he wants. And nobody told me, you're super special, you should try anything. My parents told me, when you go to college, you'll find out there are other people just as smart as you. You're going to have to work hard. That was their advice. It was true. To me, the excitement is that we have a chance to really understand our human history. It's really, I think that's exciting. Other people seem to also, although they concentrate on other things like genealogy and human history. I like to reach back as far as possible, because there are so many discoveries currently being made about the nature of the universe, how the physical universe has been expanding all these many billions of years, and how stars and galaxies are formed from that. We're even beginning to learn how the Earth comes to be, how common our planets around other stars. So to me, this is a fascinating story, and I think the public is interested too. So it's not just because I'm interested, it's because I can tell other people care about this also. There are even a lot of people who care because they already disagree with the story, but they care, you know. So I take that as a tremendous vote of how important it is to people. Well, I think the thing that I'm working on is one of the great frontiers. It's the new telescope. It's called the James Webb Space Telescope, which will be able to observe things farther back in time than Hubble can see, and to see inside dust clouds where stars are being born today. There's a new star being born more or less once a year in our Milky Way. It'd be pretty cool to watch that happen, because maybe we'd understand how the sun was made. We're finding more and more planets around other stars, so we'll hope to learn something about whether ours is in fact unique, like we were speculating before. So that, to me, this is a fascinating set of things to be working on. So it's one of but this is an observational frontier. We're building a new tool. And in truth, we don't really know what they're going to find. One of the great confident hopes that we have is that there will be a big surprise there, that we will not predict everything. And that seems to be the nature of astronomy. We almost never predict what we're going to see and get it right. There were so many wonderful predictions made before the Hubble telescope was launched, and so many of them were wrong, it was great. And basically almost none of the predictions that people made about exoplanets, the planets around other stars, almost none of those were right. So it's been almost entirely determined by observing. So it's full of surprises. And my perspective on that is getting to be, well, if you can imagine it, it probably happens somewhere. And so we're limited by our imagination. And we should expect surprises. We see back in time really easy. I see you as you were about 4 nanoseconds ago. Light travels fast, but its speed is not infinite. So if we look at something that's really far away, we see it as it was. So very simple. So if you see the middle of our own galaxy, it's about 25,000 years ago that it had to send the light to us. If you look at something like the Andromeda Nebula, it's several million years ago as it was. If you look at the farthest things you can see, it's 13 billion years. You're looking back in time already. And that's almost all that there is. 13.75 is the estimated age of the universe. So, and by the way, the cosmic microwaves that we measure, they show the universe as it was when it was only about 400,000 years old. And we have its baby picture. And we'd like to know, well, how did that work? How did it grow up? I think the recognition of the expanding universe was somewhat sudden. On the other hand, the evidence was building up over time. It dates back to the early part of the 20th century. First, it was necessary to find out what galaxies are, and they found out the distant galaxies actually have stars in them. Then the next question was, well, are they moving? And they seem mostly to be moving away. Then the next question is, how far away are they? And people started to get measurements, and especially Edwin Hubble got measurements of this. Then in 1929 was the big aha moment, because he made a graph, and he showed about 20 or 30 galaxies, and he showed that there's this trend, that the farther away they are, the faster they're going. And it's a pretty good trend. So, okay, now maybe this is true. Now I see the universe is expanding. So this was the sort of sudden moment. People had predicted it. 2 theorists had predicted it. And Einstein said it can't be right. But then it was right. So that was a big aha moment for science. But it was something that developed over time. So, by the way, we still call it the Big Bang, but we really shouldn't. We should be calling it the expanding universe. And the reason that I say that is people immediately picture a little hand grenade going off when you say a Big Bang, and what we actually mean is the universe is expanding. We did not see a bang. It did not have a start that we can see. We know that the clock hasn't ticked very long. It's ticked for 13.7 billion years, but we do not see the moment before that. We do not see that event. We see the universe as it was when it was young. We don't see it being born. And that's a pretty big thing we have to think about. But so far, all we have as science is the process for one thing turning into another. We don't have anything that says there was nothing and then there was something. It's curious because almost all of the public thinks we mean something else. But we don't. We mean we see the expanding universe and we trace its history back. We do not see that it comes into existence. We can predict the lifespan of our sun. It's been going for 4.5 billion years about, and it's got another billion or so before it's too bright for us to live here. When it's another 5 billion roughly from now, it will be expanding to be the size of the Earth's orbit, roughly, and it will be turning into what we call a red giant star. After 7.6 billion or so, that's over 2, and it will shrink down to become a white dwarf star. So it means its nuclear interior fuel is used up, and it will get fainter and cooler over many billions of years. So that's its probable life cycle. So maybe we get some space travel before that. Our solar system will continue orbiting around our galaxy for a few billion years. But it's an interesting question because in about 2 billion years, maybe 3 or 4, but soon anyway, in cosmic terms, the Andromeda Nebula is coming at us. It's that big, beautiful thing you can see with binoculars in the in the autumn sky over in the east. And so it's coming toward us. When galaxies collide, the parts go flying every which way. Stars mostly do not collide with each other. The planets are not likely to be ripped away from the sun, but the sun could be flung off into intergalactic space. As I like to say, we could get voted off the island. Now, it'll be pretty spectacular to be there as a witness because cosmic collisions will occur, and the black holes that are at the middles of the galaxies, they will probably have a merger event. Will be spectacular. So something amazing will happen. And we can only tell this is likely because we measure the velocities as Andromeda Nebula is coming toward us. And we see what happens when other galaxies collide because we can take their pictures out there. And we even make movies of what it should be like because we can simulate everything in computers now. So it's spectacular even just to watch the movie. Some of the ancient Greeks were astonishingly thoughtful. Some of them knew the size of the Earth. Some of them knew the distance to the moon. There was a small mechanism that was made perhaps by Archimedes and his shop, which could calculate the motions of the planets as you would see them from here. It was a gearbox, like a giant clock, and probably some rich person ordered it. So they knew a vast amount about how things actually work. I don't know whether any of them guessed that the Earth was not the middle. There are certainly people who understood the process of change, and there were people who, I had the idea of atoms, as you know, because the word is a Greek word anyway. Some people really got it pretty well along, considering how little they had to work with. But then it's a little bit of a mystery to me how come such things slowed down as much as they did between the beginning of the Roman Empire and its decay. So then some science went into hibernation, and some was probably being done and was being lost. So then we have this amazing flowering all over again in the late 15th and beginning of the 16th centuries, where suddenly science takes off, and who knows why that was. But it did. I think in a way the most exciting moment is seeing the rocket go up that carried the Kobe satellite into space, because we'd worked for 15 years to make that happen, and you realize as you're watching it that there's nothing you can do if there's a fault there in the rocket. So you just say, well, I hope that works. And of course, it's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. You're standing out in the middle of the field on the California coast and thinking about your future and what happens. So that's exciting. And it's also, when it works, of course, it's a bit of an anticlimax. Now, what do I do? Well, you know what you have to do. You have to head home and get ready to operate the observatory. But anyway, that was a pretty exciting moment, I have to say. The particular idea of the Cosmic Background Explorer satellite was one of my ideas. But is it really my idea? It's hard to tell. Like I say, these things are community property almost. I happen to be the person who said, my thesis didn't work, we should have done it in outer space. But in truth, I wasn't the first person to think that sort of thought. I remember a review committee came around to review my thesis project when I was at Berkeley. It was a NASA committee, and they said, why aren't you doing this in outer space? So it wasn't really my idea alone. I was the one that stood up and said, yeah, maybe we should try that. So that's an interesting thing, because so the ideas themselves are not so unusual. What I think was as important, though, was I had somehow the ability and the team to work with to continue through until it worked. And that's pretty special. And you can't claim responsibility for that either. You go into an environment at NASA where there are many, many people that it takes to operate the system. In the back of our book about the Cosmic Background Explorer satellite are the names of about 1,500 people. So they all worked on it. And many of them were completely essential. And if they hadn't done what they did, it wouldn't have worked. If you want to say design a giant telescope, you have to describe what the scientific purpose is and what you want it to accomplish. And then you have to set up a process with an engineering team to say, well, let's translate these wishes into drawings and concepts and then this is something called systems engineering. And it's a specialty in engineering to be able to translate the wish into the parts. So that's one thing to do. Then another thing is if you're working on something, which I often did more personally during the Kobe project, say you're sitting there with a problem that has to be solved and you're working with engineers to solve the problem, it's been my faith that I'm not usually the one that knows the answer. Somebody sitting in the corner not saying anything could be the one that knows the answer to this one and has been waiting for you to call on him or her to say so. So a lot of it's a group process management to encourage the people who could solve the problem to speak up. So it's saying basically it's a social endeavor. Science and engineering together are both. And very rare for a single person to do it alone. I think when I was younger, I just didn't know what it could accomplish. I didn't start out with a plan to do anything particular. Most of my life was not planned in advance. I didn't know where I was going to go. Mostly, I would say my life strategy has been respond to opportunity. And then when somebody gives you a responsibility, then stick to it. So it's worked out. I didn't have a plan when I left Berkeley to build this Kobe satellite. In fact, I was going to do something else because I thought it was too hard. But somebody said, well, write a proposal. I thought, well, it's pretty unlikely to be chosen, but it might be, and that would be glorious. So then when we got a chance to do it, of course, I said yes. Then when it turned out to be a lot harder than people thought, well, okay, I'll stay with it anyway. So I don't give up. I think that's part of the achievement. I think that's what we've heard from a lot of the other speakers at this event as well today, that you just don't give up when something is hard. You just get more resources and keep on going. I think astronomy will make huge progress. Biology is closer and closer to understanding the detailed molecular approaches to managing diseases. I think that some of the big diseases of today will be mastered in some way. I think artificial intelligence will come along to be much more important than it is today. I think the demonstration that IBM made of their Watson program on TV is pretty spectacular, and I know they're working on making it useful to people. So I think we're going to see an incredible growth of the artificial intelligence and distributed computer systems to where maybe they're actually really useful and it's not just, I'd like to look up something cool on Google. I think maybe someday the computer will actually be able to help us think. And so it's not impossible. It's pretty complicated. As you know, it's been in our future for a long time. And it's turned out to be much harder than the original proponents thought. But it's not impossible, as far as I can tell. And I wouldn't be too surprised if, say, in 50 years, I could come in, if I'm still alive, come in and say to the computer, well, it's time to go to Mars. And the computer will say, okay, I know what to do. One thing we don't have, as far as I know, in engineering is a kind of archive or library of all the successful things we've ever done. If somebody says, well, I need to have a ball that spins in space, so how do I lubricate it? You would think that by now a computer could say, well, I know how to do that because it's been done before and show you drawings. As far as I know, it's not available. But why couldn't it be? So if we need to send people to Mars, well, we need something that's at least that helpful. Otherwise, it's just too hard. So I think that's a way in which even elementary artificial intelligence could be extremely helpful to us. Another application would be if we have enough of it, we can send it to Mars by itself. Okay, Mars rover, drive around by yourself and find something interesting, as compared to waiting for us to send a command every day to please go another few feet. So there's a huge amount that's possible with even a little bit of improvement of autonomy for our remote robotic sensors. So I think there's a lot of possibility there, and it's pretty hard to do. Otherwise, we would have done it. but I think it's worth doing and will have tremendous effects on practically everything else we do too. It seems to me life experience gives you some range of things to remember and connect. It's clearly part of our intelligence is connecting the dots, seeing the patterns that are there or could be there. Partly it is also that we gradually develop a point of view that says, yeah, creativity is something we know how to do, and it's worth doing, and we're going to try. I've gotten more and more interested in thinking of new ways to do space missions. So that's part of where my creativity goes. So I enjoy having conversations with people about what if we try this. So some of it's intentional. You say, I'm looking for a problem to solve. Let's go solve something. So that drives creativity. So that's part of it. For me, I think it matters a lot to know that I have done what I can for my fellow human beings, that I've behaved with integrity, that the scientific discoveries that I claim are true are actually correct. Because if they are or are not, it's going to be found out sometime. So I would like to be known as the person who did find it out and it was right. It's sort of a really basic part of our scientific creed that we have to get it right and help people tell. So we publish. We do. That's part of what we do. I do want to be remembered also for what good I can do with other people, for other people, with other people. So trying to help the next generations get started in doing things, support kids who want to grow up to become scientists and engineers. That, of course, is not the only subject to be working on, but that's something I know to work on. So that's part of what I'm thinking. I think there's also an attitude that people need to cultivate of appreciation. I'd like to be known as a person who did recognize and appreciate the contributions of his friends and family. Is basically expressing love where it belongs. So that's some of what I'm thinking of. I think that's a very deep question, though. I think number one, be curious. Number two, be open to opportunity. Maybe three, help cause that opportunity to occur. If somebody knows that you want to be a scientist, they maybe wish to help you. A lot of people grow up in areas where it's not easy to get started. But if you're inspired, maybe you can make something happen. You have to somehow find the way to cause your dreams to come true. I think this is true across all areas of growing up. You need to find a way to cause your dreams to come true. Sometimes it's a matter of figuring out what they are or noticing what they are, and sometimes it's a matter of reaching out to other people to say, I've got this great idea, can you help me do this? Sometimes it's a crazy idea. Maybe tell me that it's crazy, I should stop. In any case, we need to sort of encourage the communication and the resourcefulness of young people and older people. We're all creative at all ages, and maybe we should all consider what we can do to realize those dreams. To be a little more specific for scientists, I'd say one of the important things is to know is it's not just about thinking of stuff and doing stuff, it's also communicating stuff. If you want to do what you want to do, you have to explain it to people, so they will support it. Science is almost never done just because it's cool. It's done because somebody really wants to help you find out. So you have to ask for a company to sponsor your work, or your family to sponsor your work, or your government to sponsor your work one way or another. You're always persuading somebody of something's importance. So think about persuasion, study English and writing, and master the art of explaining things. So if your mom can understand why you're excited about what you do, maybe the funding agency will also. So advice there is to give a lot of thought to good writing and good communicating. Practice it. In our country, we value science immensely. And we once in a while pretend that we don't. And the part of the pretense is that certain forces exist because they, if we actually took action based on the science, then somebody would lose some money. An example is pretty clear about the tobacco industry. Science proved a long time ago that people got cancer from smoking. And other bad things would happen to us too. Well, certain forces said, well, we don't want you to tell anyone that, so we'll pretend that science doesn't matter. We'll pretend you didn't find that out. Similar forces are at work in every other area that really matters in life. If there's money involved, somebody will say, I don't want you to regulate me. I think I'll pretend your science isn't right. So we shouldn't be surprised. In fact, to me, it means that science is even more important than people let on. It's one of those curious things that's it's the two sides of a coin. If it's really important, we're going to be, and we don't want it to pay attention, we'll pretend it isn't true. But it doesn't make anything change. Nature doesn't care what we think. Nature does what nature does, and doesn't particularly respond to pretending that it's not there. So we've got huge challenges governing the entire world's future about energy, climate, water supply, practically everything that you can name about the global world economy, the global world health. Everything depends on science and engineering in tremendously deep ways. So all we can do is really work on it and keep on going, and then provide the information to the people who have to make decisions. So scientists don't make decisions for the world. Other people do. So we'll try to do our best to give the right information. Yes, it does. It gives a tremendous opportunity for communication that you didn't always have, or maybe you didn't know you had. But aside from that, my life is about the same as before. I continue to have the same job title and continue to talk to the public, only just more so. So the change for me has been somewhat gradual. But I was a little afraid of it when I first heard the call. Your life is changed now. But it's as much like it was before as I can make it.